Hi, everybody. Welcome to NLL Lacrosse Talk. I'm Gary Groob. With me is my special guest this week, Brett Manney, former NLL player. Great to have you on the show, Brett.
Thanks, Gary. Like the jersey in the background.
I figure you would. I got Doyley's jersey from the San Jose days, so it's a little
Love
collector's item.
Love it.
Mind you, I've also got you a Wings cap from your era over my shoulder as well.
That's iconic.
I've lost your picture. Oh, there you go. There you go.
I've gone back here. Yep.
No worries. My first question is always that we ask everybody is, how did you get involved in lacrosse? What got you started?
My sister, she was 2 years older than me. She did. She was a freshman in high school, and I had no idea what lacrosse was. And she ended up playing in high school. And my dad, I have a twin brother, so he kind of asked me and my brother if we wanted to play with her. And we would have catches and everything like that. And then kind of one thing led to another. I started playing in high school, and, I just kind of took off from there. So never really knew what it was until 7th grade. And then from there, kind of like the rest is history.
Right. What made you stay in the game?
Just the love of the game. I fell in love with it. I was a 3-sport athlete. And for me, it was just, I played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse, and it was a kind of a combination between it all. So I just think that for me, I was able to incorporate all the skills from soccer, basketball. I played hockey really young when I was growing up. So I just saw it as this plethora and blend of all the different sports together. And I just kind of fell in love with it.
Right. What they used to make us do was, because being hockey guys, just to make sure they kept our money, was you had to play lacrosse. It's year round, keep you in shape, but it kept all the rinks going all through the summers too, right?
That makes sense. Yeah, especially up there in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had lots of rinks that weren't doing much, especially in the 70s when I was growing up. You went to Holy Ghost. Now, when you got there, they had just formed a varsity lacrosse program. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was in its infancy for sure. When I got there, it was 2000. I think the program was maybe 7 years old at that point in time. So we really didn't have much of a program or history, and no kids went to play Division I lacrosse until I did. So it was just very young. For most of my years there, I had a young coach, a guy who was basically 24 to 26, and there was a lot of learning and developing, and we were okay. I mean, we had some athletes, but no one that really had a ton of lacrosse experience. And to be completely blunt, it was my third sport. I was a much better soccer and basketball player than I was lacrosse, especially in high school. Lacrosse just offered me the most growth and potential when I graduated from Holy Ghost. And, I just felt like that there was at its infancy, and I just wanted to make an impact. And I was just fortunate enough that I got to play with my twin brother and a lot of my really close friends. So I was just fortunate in my time there and tried to do as much as I could in my 4 years.
Sure. Now, you went to University of Delaware. Let's talk about that. How did you get involved with the University of Delaware? Were there showcases? How did this all happen?
Yeah, it was different really back then. I mean, I didn't play for a club because, like I said, I was a better soccer and basketball player. Mm-hmm. So for me, I did soccer and basketball really in the summer, and I was doing a lot of those camps. And then lacrosse, I would do these random, 1 or 2 or 3 day showcases. And that's when colleges really started reaching out to me. And, I got, multiple letters from Delaware, and I got to visit the school. Back then you could do official visits, and you used to be able to take 5 of them. And for me, it was Delaware, Fairfield, Navy, Notre Dame, and Bucknell were really my 5 schools. And then I kind of narrowed it down to Delaware. But it was funny. I told the head coach at the time, Bob Schillinglaw, that I wasn't going to commit to any school until I was done my senior year in basketball.
Right.
And we ended up making it to the state championship. So I didn't commit to Delaware until April of my senior year. And at that point in time, I think I was probably our last kid. But it ended up being extremely rewarding for me.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the Delaware years, because you had a really good career there, and the team did really well. You made its only trip to the Final Four in 2007, which was also played at Lincoln Financial. So good hometown deal there.
Yeah, it was quite the year that year. I mean, we had a very good program in all my 4 years there. Um, my first year we went to NCAA tournament. The second year we lost in the conference championship, and then the third year we made the run to the Final Four, which had some really good guys like Jordan Hall was on the team and Curtis Dixon. So, sorry, I'm getting like bombarded by my kids here. It was just an unreal experience. Like we basically we got hot at the right time and we upset Virginia in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we kind of just caught on fire and did everything we could to be successful. But we were very talented. Like that's the one thing that people don't really talk much about is we had a lot of talented guys on that team that went to play on Team USA, Team Canada. And we just happened to overlap during those 4 years at Delaware. And unfortunately we lost to Hopkins, but playing in front of 45,000 people is something I'll never forget.
Absolutely. But you did more than play lacrosse while you were at Delaware. You actually were doing broadcasting and broadcast journalism. This actually plays into a lot into where you are now. A lot when you were doing the MLL thing. Let's talk about that. And you were doing ESPN High School, and of course that's gone the way of the dodo. But your time there with ESPN as well.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, when I was at school, I wasn't just a lacrosse player. I was on the student radio, and I broadcasted the football games, and Joe Flacco was our quarterback. So, we had a lot going on, and I did the basketball games. I just loved to do it. Like, and that was something I wanted to do, post-collegiately, which I got into, and I started covering for ESPN High School and started doing some stuff there, and that kind of led to opportunities with broadcasting and doing the MLL. And I was playing in the MLL actually. And the story, that would happen is there's two new teams in Ohio and in Columbus. And I reached out to the main video guy for the MLL. And I said, look, like I get my kicks playing indoor. Is there any way that I can broadcast for one of these teams? And I made a sales pitch about myself. I showed him my tapes from high school. And basically, he let me do the Ohio. I was the main color guy for the Ohio Machine. And whenever the Charlotte Hounds guy couldn't do it, I flew down to Charlotte. So I just had like a wonderful experience doing that and getting a ton of reps. And I knew a lot of guys from playing professional for so many years. So one thing kind of led to another, doing the MLO games from the ESPN. And it's something now that I'm not playing anymore that I would love to get into even more and add value there from like commentating, whether it's the collegiate game or the professional game.
Right. Now you mentioned MLL, and of course now we've got PLL. But during those years, you were drafted by the Washington Bayhawks in 2008. Let's talk about that because now you've hit the the pinnacle, so to speak, of lacrosse, at least for a U.S. guy.
Yeah, it was It was interesting. I definitely I knew I was going to get drafted from what my one assistant coach was going to say. I just didn't know when, and it's not like I was doing anything special or sitting around in my college apartment. I actually went to a Phillies game with one of my roommates from Delaware, and I got called that I got drafted, and it was a little frustrating to be honest. Like the first year back then, I was a short stick defensive midfielder, so you could only dress 3 long poles. So what they were doing was they were basically allowing every guy who was a rookie defenseman, like a long pole, they were giving him a short stick. And so I played the very first game I could have, and I missed my graduation. So I got drafted on a Wednesday, and then I ended up playing in a game that Sunday. And then after that, I didn't play a game for a month and a half because they were giving everyone else opportunities to play in games. So that was kind of frustrating. And then we started to stink. So my experience there was very up and down, and it kind of soured me a little bit. So actually I took 1 or 2 years off, and I didn't think I was going to get back into playing pro outdoor again until Dave Cottle joined the staff and became a GM. They moved the team to Annapolis with new ownership and kind of convinced me to start playing outdoor again. But it was an experience that wasn't the best, which is, why I kind of stuck around with indoor so long, is I just had a great experience, especially my rookie year in San Jose, and really fell in love with the game.
Right. Right. And you wound up playing for Rochester in 2011 before you called it quits with that. But at this time, you've also gotten into the NLL. Let's talk about that, because you were supposed to get drafted with Doug Locker, and some things happened in between that. Let's talk about that whole story.
Yeah, Blocker was the only guy that was really giving me a lot of attention. And, he's like, hey, we're going to pick you and all this other stuff. And of course, I'm seeing all these other Americans getting picked and all these other guys. And I basically don't get picked. So here I am thinking hey, what happened? Did I do something wrong? And, did you not value me as high? And I thought he was just pulling my chain. So he ends up picking me up as a undrafted free agent. And then, I kind of made the team, and the rest is history. Sorry, as my daughter here is having a small meltdown trying to eat something. But I just found ways to make it work, and I used it as a chip on my shoulder to just, prove to them, hey, and prove to everyone else that was in the league at the time, I should have been picked. And I think my career kind of showed that.
Right. Right. Let's talk about getting into that first training camp that you got. And my question is always, was it what you envisioned it was going to be?
It was certainly the rude awakening. That's for sure. I had many different opportunities to kind of portray my athleticism. So I think that's what certainly helped me moving forward, was being able to be an athlete. And I didn't wear rib pads, and I just remember the first scrimmage we had was in Colorado. Reese Dutch gave me rib pads to wear, and I think from that moment on, I was wow, this was, guys were just cross-checking me all over the place. And I think because I was younger, I wasn't feeling it as much. But then I started realizing oh, I need to wear more pads, and I got to be more physical. And for me, what helped was my basketball background.
Right.
And I was able to be this is how you hedge your pick. And it just became natural to me, where they just were telling me Brett, it's how you play basketball. And once that kind of clicked for me, it was great. The hardest thing I struggled with was picks and repicks. Because, when you're playing American defense and outdoor, once you guard your guy and you throw it away, you basically did your job. But, realizing that aspect of the game was a little bit harder. But I couldn't have asked for a better group of guys that welcomed me onto the team and taught me as much as they knew. Guys like Kyle Sorsen and Mike Grimes, Peterborough guys, and Colin Doyle was one of the best leaders and captains I've ever been around. And I learned a lot from him on his leadership style and how he led. So I think that it was just, I was very fortunate to get in that locker room and in that organization of guys that were winners, but more importantly, incredible guys and great leaders and teammates to help my game grow.
Right. And teachers, for that matter, really.
Yep.
No, it's astounding, and it shows just how much an athlete you were, because having never played box lacrosse at all, and you're able to walk on to an NLL lineup, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think my best assets was my athleticism. I'm 6'3" and 215 pounds, but I was able to use what my tools were in basketball and soccer and just the natural gifts that I had, to be athletic. And for my size, I can move pretty well. So being able to combine all those things is certainly an advantage. And it was something that certainly helped me the first couple years. But as I got older, I had to rely on smarts for sure. But the athleticism was one part, and then I just tried to soak in as much as I could from my teammates so that I could be, a great defender and learn as much about the game from them other than just one-on-one defense.
Right. Now, San Jose originally had some pretty good attendance, and then it faltered. It wound up being you guys and whichever custodial crew was in there for the evening.
Yeah.
But you guys move. You guys wind up going to Everett, Washington. Let's talk about that. How did that come across? Was this like the old style of here's an email? By the way, pack up your stuff. We're now in Washington, or did they actually let you know what was going on?
No, we had like inklings that we were going to move, and then basically, and this was a lot was from talking to Doug Locker. Okay, there were proposals getting put on the table, and from what I can remember, I think one of the places was Redding, California. Another place was outside of Vancouver was Langley, where they eventually went, and then there was Everett, Washington, and basically everyone kind of made pitches on what they wanted, and then we moved to Everett, which is about 30 minutes north of Seattle, very blue collar town, but the arena was incredible. It was perfect. It's at like 8,000. It was actually called like the Comcast Center.
Mm-hmm.
They treated us really well. They would pick you up at the airport, or you would get like on a little bus and they would drive you to the hotel, and the hotel was close to the arena. Downtown Everett was like a little bit sketchy in some parts, but not terrible. We went to Seattle a few times, which was beautiful, but I mean, we ended up having like a miracle run, and we had it to a championship and won the whole thing. I think championship game, it was sold out, and the people really bought on to the game there. And, we had such a phenomenal team, and can't mention a lot of those guys I've already did before. Like, just the success that we had there was built with the guys on the team. And, you couldn't, for that ownership and front office, you couldn't ask for anything better than your first year, winning a championship in a new city.
Sure. I think one of the things too is you added guys like Matt Beers, and then of course they traded Colin Doyle to Toronto, and you got Lewis Ratcliffe. And who knew at that time that was going to be the piece that actually put you guys over the edge?
Yeah, and I remember specifically him sending an email to us because Toronto sucked the year before. They won like 4 games, and Doyle saying, "Hey guys, like best of luck, and I'll see you in the championship." And I was just thinking to myself, like, dude, there's no way. Like, you stink. But, to his credit, and with a couple good rookies, like I think they had Steph LeBlanc and they got Garrett Billings, and you put Colin Doyle into a room, like, you're going to win. And just by chance, like, we were in the championship that year against them. But, it wasn't only Lewis. We did get Beers, but we also had Luke Wiles in that trade. So he just added like another weapon to the right side. Lewis came in and had a great year. And stepped in and scored a lot of goals on the lefty side. And then Reese Dutch was in his second year, and Cam Cedric was like a great third lefty who was always moving and setting picks. So our offense wasn't just like 1 or 2 guys like it was the year before with really Doyle and Zawicki. Now we had 5 or 6 guys that were dangerous on offense and all could put the ball in the back of the net. And it was certainly fun to play defense behind those guys.
Right. Also, having a goalie of T. Rich was pretty amazing too. That never hurt either.
No, T. Rich is the man, and he was great. Like that year, he was unbelievable, and so cool, calm, and collective too. I think we started out like 7 or 8-0, and he was the main reason why. Like, not many people can probably remember the D guys that were on the team. It's not like we had a national, like we had a defender of the year or anything like that. But we had a lot of really good guys or guys that were like coming up that were going to be really, really impactful studs in the league. And when T. Rich played the way he did, that was the reason why.
Right. And of course, that championship game was strange to say the least, because Toronto had a lead going into the, coming to the end of the third, an empty net goal, pulling their goalie, and that changed everything. In the fourth, you guys just poured it on and came away with a big win.
Yeah, it was special. And like when you think about, that game, you more or less like think about the year and what happened. And it was tough for me. Like, I dislocated my elbow that year, and I was actually the first game, and it's like realizing like what it's like to go through adversity and know that your team is being extremely successful, and kind of putting behind your own selfish needs to try to get back and be on like this competitive, very successful team. So for us to do that, and for me personally, to be part of a team that went to the championship, and like I said, Gary, it was, that place that night was rocking, and to be able to do that with that group of guys was special. And it was one of those things that, as I played in the league and got to see Curtis Hodgson coaching, with Vancouver, and seeing T. Rich coaching and some of these other guys making impacts,
Yep.
once their careers were done, it was certainly special because, those are lifelong relationships after you can host a cup together.
Right. Now, the grind of going from Philadelphia cross country to Vancouver obviously wore on you.
Yeah, that's the reason why after that year we won, I don't demand, but I just asked, like, hey, could you trade me East Coast, preferably be Philadelphia? Just because it wasn't the year before was actually worse in San Jose because we had I had to go to connecting flight. At least with Philly to Seattle, I was able to at least get a direct flight. They had direct flights from Philly to Seattle, but it was long. But I was young, and with Starbucks coffee, I was able to power through it. But yeah, I learned a lot. I read a lot, and I just tried to make the most of my time during those flights. But yeah, at that point in time, I was like, I won. I kind of gave you those 2 years of my life of that commute, and I just think it was best for me to get back East Coast, and that ended up happening with trade with Philly.
Right. Now they trade Bob Snyder for you. And now you're back with Johnny Meridian again as a GM. Let's talk about your days with Johnny, because there's always a story. Yeah. Johnny's been on the show a few times, and I have I have a good relationship with him over the years. So.
The Gyps is a classic. I didn't know that his nickname. I thought like everyone kind of knew his nickname was Gypsy. And my rookie year, I remember on the bus going to a game in Colorado and seeing a bar that was called Gypsy and pointing it out, and I just think. Doyley got like the biggest laugh out of everyone once I pointed it out to him on the bus. And then the second story I have about him is we were playing our last game of the year was in Minnesota, and the week before we lost, so we were out of like the playoff contention. And the week before, I also like busted my nose. I got 7 stitches in it, like massive injury. It was like even during the week, I had to like a plastic surgeon looked at it and all this other stuff. And everyone's like, hey, like we advise you not to play, shut it down, especially since, you're playing a physical sport. This could happen again, And so here I'm thinking, all right, there's one more game. They're not going to dress me. Like I'm getting shut down. And Johnny calls me on like Wednesday or Thursday. Hey, and I have 7 zippers in my nose. And Johnny goes, hey, Brett, I think we need you this weekend. A couple guys are sick and blah, blah, blah. And can you fly out to Minnesota? And I'm like, sure, like just being a teammate, I'll be like, hey, I'll be there. My now wife, probably girlfriend at the time, probably wasn't too pleased. Sure. But we fly out there, and here we are. Like I said, it was our last game. We're done. So it's Friday night. We're all in the hotel, and just by chance, this hotel had like karaoke. So guys are like, like we can let our hair down, and we're not going to go wild, but we could have a beer or two. So guys are in there, hanging out. Karaoke comes on, and I just pick Fleetwood Mac Gypsy with Gyps in the bar, and everyone just loses it. And I start singing it to him and serenading them, and he was a good sport about it, but it was one of those moments where you're just like, oh, this is pretty epic between your coach and GM and a player and the relationship. And I was like, well, if you're gonna have me play with these 7 stitches in my nose and a mask that like reflective mask that I was gonna get chirped at, well, just let me sing Gypsy karaoke for you.
That's brilliant. Now, being a Philadelphia guy, you're traded to Philadelphia. What's it like? You're walking on the floor, and now you got the hometown crowd. You got family there. You got everything there.
It's special. It was something that I never took for granted. And, I loved it. The fact that I was able to, it's almost like every kid's dream is to play in their own hometown for a professional sport. And yeah, I know it's not the Eagles or Flyers or Sixers, but I was a diehard sports fan growing up. And it's how my dad raised me about going to games. And I went through like 1 or 2 Wings games in high school, and they were like out of control. And to be able to go there and play in every game, having like at least 20 people in the stands that were there for me, was pretty special. At the same point in time, it was a huge distraction. Every game, people were coming, and you need to get them tickets and get them good seats, and you're filling out stuff before the game. When all I wanted to do was focus on just playing, which was something I was able to do once I got to Connecticut. But it wasn't something that I ever regretted, and I was just extremely blessed, and I'm very thankful looking back on it that my friends and family who didn't get to see me play that much professional lacrosse my first 2 to 3 years outside of school were able to see a lot of me over the next 3 to 4.
Right, and I love the Philly crowd because I worked with Edge of Philly for a bunch of years as well, and well, this is for you.
Oh, go Birds! Go Birds, Cat, my man.
Now let's talk because this was when Meridian had that experiment of mostly U.S. players, and you guys were successful for a bit, but having guys like Mundorf, Westervelt, Nadelin, Inucci, you guys had a lot of talent on the team.
Yeah, unfortunately, like we ran into Buzzsaw Rochester there for a few years, and they were just they were our Achilles heel. Like we had ups and downs and moments there, and they wanted a ton of Americans,
Hmm.
which I understood to the part of like trying to sell tickets and everything. But I think we maybe had one or two many of them, I would say. But with
Hmm.
that being said, like we were a goal away from beating Rochester the first year of their three-peat, and we ran into them the next year. It was like a similar thing. We couldn't beat Vino. I think we might need like one or more two Canadian guys to put a kink in his armor.
Hmm.
But it was fun playing with all those guys and doing it. And obviously, like they were trying to do something different because they weren't winning beforehand. So if they're able to get some of the best American players, let's see if that were working. But I think it would have made it a little bit better if we had a couple more Canadians there to help balance it out. To be honest, I think you certainly need your Americans, but I think you need a healthy balance of them to win in the NLL.
Right. I think it was a little bit before its time. If you did that idea now, the way U.S. Boxla has worked with the box lacrosse game, I think you probably had a much better opportunity because it's much more savvy box lacrosse U.S. crowd.
Yeah, just imagine like a lefty side of like CJ Kurse, Blaze Reardon, like Brendan O'Neill, and a defense would be Danny Logan and Ryan Terafinko and Connor Kirst. I think outside of the goalie, you would be able to put together if you could find like 9 or 10 of the best 20 Americans and put them all on one team, you would be very successful. You'd be pretty
Powers,
damn athletic. And now these kids are coming in like with a ton of box experience, whereas 15, 20 years ago, we didn't.
right,
We were just learning on the fly, and you had to pick it up in training camp or else you were cut and never playing again.
right. You're in there in Philadelphia, and now we get another one of these moves, and this one took everybody by storm. This one, no one really expected originally that Philadelphia is going to move out of Philadelphia, and you wind up going to a casino in Connecticut. Let's
Yep.
talk about Rich Lisk and the move there and everything and how that was explained to you.
Yeah, that was wild. That one certainly caught me off guard. We talked about the move with San Jose before, and then this one. He called me up and said, we're moving and we're going to go to a casino. And my first impressions were like casino in Atlantic City, which are kind of like trash. And then, the first time I get to the Mohegan was like beautiful. And I just couldn't believe the impact that it had on the community and how nice the casino was. And the fact that they just welcomed us with open arms. So, playing at the Mohegan, if you talk to anyone, was like a special experience that, we all loved and wish that they got a team back, to be honest with you.
Right. They had a built-in home field advantage as well with a smaller field, one, and two. The game that you played was a Sunday afternoon game most of the season.
Yeah, we had smaller rinks, different boards. We would play sometimes Sunday afternoons. So we had the best home field advantage. And as I got, older, I loved it. You could crowd on guys. You could be right on top of them. They didn't even know like you were doing that. So our pressure defense was to our advantage at times. And the ball wouldn't come back as hard off the boards. It would die. So there were certain like little intricacies of the floor, which made it better for us and a huge home floor advantage. Like I bet if you looked at our wins and losses, there was a lot more wins than losses that we had when we played at the Mohegan.
I believe that. And Glenn Clark, he built something really special over the years there, because you take a look at the players that they had with you, and you're talking about Kevin Crowley, Garrett Billings, Brett Bucktooth, Tyler Digby, Sean Evans, eventually Callum Crawford. You had Matt Spanger for a bit, Riley O'Connor, the Buchanan guys, Jay Thornbear, Colton Watkinson. You had Doug Jamieson, who was young and just developing into the goalie of goalies that he's become. These are all huge pieces into building it, and it culminated, ironically, in the COVID year, a year where I thought that was your year to win the championship, and of course the world shut down.
Yeah, two big things which kind of put us over the hump was one, Glenn Clark. The first year we didn't have him, and the next year he came in and just totally shifted the culture and philosophy. And he brought in Jim Veltman, who led to a more freestyle play on defense. And, we kind of just took off from there. So that was that. And then they made a trade for Sean Evans. And it was the first time, we had like a superstar. Even going back to my days in Philly, we had really good players, but not a guy that, hey, this guy's going to give us easily 100 points. So when we got Evie in there, like that's when we started winning with the combination of Clarkey and all the other pieces. And I think just from there, it was pretty special in that 2020 year. Like, I'm so connected to a lot of those guys on that team because, that was our year to win. We just had all the pieces and we were clicking, and then COVID shut the world down.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, you also had a little known guy little small guy, Bill O'Brien. What a fan favorite he became.
Yeah, Bill certainly, made his presence known and got a little viral fight, and such an awesome guy that actually wasn't looking for the fights until he had to do it, and then it kind of came to him. So he was certainly a guy that was, a fan favorite and just a super guy.
Absolutely. Thurl and I, we go back a ways too. Actually, one of our writers at All Lacrosse, Muffler Mike, he became a huge fan with his wife during your time over in Connecticut. Let's talk now, of course, another move. After COVID, you move to Albany, and the team's already been in Albany once. What was it like going into Albany the next time in MVP Arena?
That was weird because we were just coming back from COVID. So now, like, you still have to deal with the mask, and they were strict on what guys were doing and where we were going, and you were still trying to like figure your way. And we lost a lot of guys that year, like Steph LeBlanc left, and he went to go to Halifax, and they made like a couple moves there that year. So Callum left, for example. So Kevin Buchanan, they didn't re-sign him, and a couple of D guys. So we had a transition period in Albany, and I think that like that area too, like kind of had to learn the game again and figure out what it was. But I loved Albany when I was there, like just the commute and the guys that we had on the team. And we still had Glenn Clark, so that's what really mattered and what helped make us, really successful.
Right. Now, you're now working with another fan base and trying to get them rejuvenated, and it's been a lot of years since Albany had been in the league with the Attack. Was it difficult to get fans engaged? Did they have you guys do more with the community?
They tried to have us do some stuff, but at the end of the day, it was really like, it was tough because of COVID. They didn't want us around like a ton of people. They didn't have like post-game session. It wasn't until, the end of that season where they could have us meet season ticket holders and do stuff like that. So I just think it was tough for them that first year because of some of the restrictions, that was in the state of New York. And they tried the best they could. And we were good. We lost to Buffalo that year by, I think it was 2 goals, like 8-6. And that was the first year they won the championship. And I just think, we were just that close. And I think it was like 3-2 at halftime to a team that had all that firepower. And then, they end up making significant trades after that year, which totally changed the dynamic of the team to kind of what it is today. But, the guys that were on the team, Joe Reseteris was still on the team at that time, Riley O'Connor, Andrew Q, John LaFontaine. I mean, we had some awesome guys that I just loved being around.
Right. You had a year in which really was the character development year because of all the injuries that you guys took. And what it did was it actually gave a chance for a lot of guys who might not have had an opportunity to get in there and really, really run with it, and which led to last year's really great explosion on the scene, should we say?
Yeah,
That was your final year in on the team.
So of course, yeah, my final year, I had multiple discussions. I said, hey, I'm 37 and been with you guys for 13 years in this organization, and I'm not looking to play for a rebuilding year. And they're like, we're not rebuilding, we're just retooling. And I went with them, and because once they started making the trades and were trading away some of my best friends, that changes the dynamic of the team and the locker room, which was something I think that, going back to Rich List, like he had a big part in doing, is creating a locker room that had great leadership and great guys that all got along and played for each other.
Right.
So then you look at the next year, and we just had a lot of new faces, and we went on a streak where we lost like 7 or 8 games in a row, and we had a lot of young guys and guys in and out of the lineup. So that was a very difficult year, especially with the amount of games we lost. Mm-hmm. So I just think it came to a point in time where their success last year was a result of some of those guys going through their trials and tribulations the year before, which ended up being my last year. And that paying off and having success, and they got high draft picks and able to get Simmer and Kurtzy and eventually Dyson Williams. So, I think, I'm just very happy for those guys that are still there, the Mike Burns, the Jackson Ishimiras, Waddy, some of those guys I'm still really tight with that are still on the back end, and Dougie and, Patrick Kashock, like what they're able to do now in the team that they have is like, they're a legitimate contender now for the next 5 to 10 years with the youth and now a little bit of experience they have on the team.
Absolutely. And probably the best guy that they could choose to take the C over for you is Colton Watkinson, one of the greatest all-around players, but also one of the greatest character guys that I know.
Yeah, we'll talk about like just the growth in Waddy's game, and he came into the league like a young athletic kid, and it was like, hey, like you could get the ball and beat guys down the floor and score in transition. And, now I look at him where he's more well-rounded, and what a great defender, and leading guys and showing guys the right way to play, and you kind of see that out on the floor. And I'm just extremely happy for him, because he's worked really hard to get there. He's kept himself in great shape, and he's always done the right thing. It was just about maturing at the right time and always getting better. And, I could say that about Waddy, is that every year in the league, he just got better. Right. And, there's no better, accomplishment than when you're playing a team sport and you get to put a C on your chest and everyone looks to you to lead. So, I was just very happy for him being able to accomplish that. And, like I leave, there's no trimming of the, I was saying, hey, you trim the fat. The next thing you know, Waddy takes him to the championship. So, his first year being able to do that just shows the impact that he can make on that team and that franchise. And he has them going in the right direction.
Right. Now, 14-year career, all-time American Player Games leader. Was it tough to step away, or was it just, that's enough, I've had it?
100%. Like, it was my identity, Gary. I mean, all those weekends from November to May, and what made it hard was the guys too in the locker room. Like, I just also really enjoyed like practice. Like, I was a competitive guy in practice and would challenge guys, and would challenge myself too. And then afterwards, being in the locker room and telling jokes and talking about your week and eating dinner with the guys and catching up. And it's funny, you go as a 22-year-old that has no idea like where to put your money in a savings account, or what a stock market fund is and everything. And then now, you're 36, 37, 38, you're telling those younger guys like how to maybe invest their money, and how to get upgraded on to first class on seats, and what to do when you travel. And I knew every city I went to, I had my breakfast spots, my lunch spots, my dinner spots. And so you certainly miss, most importantly, like, it's just the guys. And I loved competing, but I just miss actually the practices of competing with and against my teammates, that getting us ready for the next day, and the shoot arounds. And just when you're in a locker room, there's so many things that it can't be said, even after you leave. but just
Yep.
the busting of the chops with guys and assistant coaches. And, that's just who I am. Like, I'm from Philly. So I don't make it easy for people, on and off the floor. So I think I kind of just who I am and the way I kind of raised, and anyone that's from this area, like, kind of knows that. So, I miss that part of just the daily relationship that you have and the competitiveness of playing.
Right. Now, I was lucky enough to be in attendance when they had the ceremony for you retiring your jersey and that. Let's talk about that. I thought the team did just an absolute class event for you.
Yeah, that certainly caught me by surprise. They reached out to me in the beginning of the year and said, "Hey, pick some dates that we want to come and have you come to a game and bring the family and honor you in some capacity." And for me, it was, I just thought, like, hey, have me come on the floor and give a quick high five, like, quick high five to the guys, and that was it. But it turned into the presentation that they did, and they gave me a whole room on the first floor. At the time, my daughter was young and my wife was pregnant, and we just let my daughter roll around and gave us seats on the glass. And, then they put that video up, and,
Mm-hmm.
they had flowers from my wife. They had a gift from my daughter, and, they put that video together. And the whole time I'm like, I'm using my code word not to cry, and just thinking about all these emotions of guys talking, like from Frenchie to LaFontaine and Glenn Clark and Waddy. It just meant the world to me to be able to, like, experience that, because it's like that Michael Jordan quote, like, the ceiling is the roof. And for me, being like a team player, I never looked at accomplishments, individually and trying to occur any of those accolades. It was always about the team. And I just felt like, when you see that go up, it's such a surreal feeling that you never, I don't think any athlete says, I want my jersey retired.
Right.
When you make a list of goals you want to achieve, it's like kind of surreal. And yeah, it was just a very special, classy move by them and that organization and the owners to do that for me, and something that, will be up there until the end of time, hopefully.
Yep, definitely. And I took a 6-hour drive to see it, and I loved it. I was felt so special to be in attendance for it because I was able to follow your career through all the years. And it's funny because seeing you even when you were playing in New England and seeing you in Philadelphia, you were still one of the most popular guys at the post game. The fans still gravitated to you, and it didn't matter where you were. It's just you as a person and you as a player. And again, team first, heart on your sleeve. All those things come across when
Yeah, I just think, even like for me, like, naturally, is that just like I'm a salesman, in my 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
So I just think, it just came naturally for me to interact with people. And I just cared too about if these people are coming to our games and, cheering for us and respecting us, like, who's for, us not to give some minutes back of our own time to them. So I just felt very grateful for the fans. And, I always just thought, like, they were coming to pay to watch us. Like, why can't we just stay and hang out and have a drink with them, or
Right.
socialize and thank them for the experiences, that, and get to know them too, and what they like about the team,
Right.
and how they view lacrosse. So it was easy for me to talk to that. And because, like you said, I come from Philadelphia, and that's how I looked at a lot of, like, our players from the Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies.
Mhm.
So I totally got where they were coming from, and now you're just on shoes on the other foot.
Right. But that's a thing with the lacrosse community. I wish it was the same in all the other sports, but it's not the first time I've heard it on the show from a player talking about, giving back to the fans because it's the fans and their hard-earned money and their time and everything else. And they just, they dive into the sport. You guys get moved and you're wearing a different jersey. These guys can have the tattoo of the team on their arm, and that will be it. And to meet up
And I
with
had
someone.
that. I
Mhm.
had that in New England. There was a guy who had a tattoo of me in New England, and, you're just like, that's dedication. And just like, he's a fan, just like, I go to Philadelphia, like, Philly games, and I'm doing the same stuff. I don't have a tattoo of, like, Bryce Harper, like, on my bicep, but, I am still invested. And,
Mhm.
the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I'm jumping up and down like a little kid, and losing my, what. because, I'm passionate and, the sports mean a lot to me.
Definitely. Now you come out, you're coaching, but you've been coaching all the way through. You've been in Haverford College, Overtime Lacrosse. You're the CEO. Let's talk about the wings. And now you're there with the head of youth development. And what's entailed there?
Yeah, so they asked me to help them out with their junior wings program, which are practices and teams and trying to make them, better in their development of the box game. There's this junior NLL tournament that they've been going to, so asking me to help coach and lead that. It's had ebbs and flows and trying to get more kids involved from the junior wings perspective. There's been certainly some hurdles there, but also too, they did a great job last year of launching like a college box league where they had like 50 kids come and kids that are at, Penn State, Notre Dame, St. Joe's, NJIT, Vermont, just to name a few that played in this league. So I'm also trying to help them grow the college league so kids are staying local and playing, and they're learning from like Blaze Reardon coached the team and Anthony Jokum. I led a team. So, trying to have those kids be better box players, but also too, if they want to play in the NLL, this is like an intro to it. But also too, they're in college, so to make them better collegiate players when they get back to their campus in the fall. So that was the second kind of component of it, and it's been very rewarding. And I look at Philadelphia area as like almost, is leading the path for box lacrosse in the country. There's the Philly A's is a club program that runs in the winter. Penlax All Stars is another club program that runs in the winter.
Mhm.
Blaze has his BR10 team. So, and there's also girls teams. So between boys and girls, I bet you that there's 200 to 300 kids playing box lacrosse in the Philly area, Gary. Which is, I don't know if there's other areas across the country that much participation.
Right, right. Because here in Canada, we've got the Arena Lacrosse League to keep sticks in hands throughout the winter, and it's also put probably 30 or 35 guys into the NLL and stayed there. Now I know the U.S. Boxla has done a lot, and we had PBLA for a brief time. Do you see more of that coming in throughout the country to try and bolster that? Because it's really been probably cutting edge here in Canada to have the ALL and have these guys ready and in game shape, all the guys on practice rosters and all the influx of extra players, because we definitely need expansion because there's so many guys that need to be in the NLL that are good enough.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is like you just need more Americans. I think you have the right amount of Canadians that are playing, but if we could have an influx of rather than having, 30 Americans that are playing, if we
Mhm.
had 60 to 70 really good Americans,
Yeah,
well, now all of a sudden you're talking about, there's another two teams right there that you can backfill those guys in. And I'm not saying that every roster needs to have like, 10 of them, but if you have 7 Americans on every roster and you have 10 teams, 10, 12 teams, whatever, now all of a sudden, that makes a difference. So, and they're coming for sure. A lot of these kids now are parents and coaches and club directors are getting into the box game and they're believing in it. So rather than kids starting at, 22 like myself, there's a lot
right,
of kids now that are playing box in the US when they're 9, 10, 11.
right.
And even me having young kids, like I'm going to have them play box first so they get more reps and touches and, they can learn that skill development sooner rather than later.
Right. Do you think expansion should be looked at again by the league? Because I know we just lost Panther City, but that's more logistics than anything else. There are plenty of players that really need to be in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certain cities that are great, but it all comes down to financials, right? Like
Hmm.
Minnesota was awesome, but they had to pay like 40,000 to play there, and they were getting 8,000 at a game. But I think it comes down to playing in the right barns, actually getting crowds that are there,
Hmm.
and someone has to take a risk on it. So if you get wealthy pockets behind it, and you're able to do it at the right venue, it can certainly work. Whether it's a Winnipeg, a Minnesota. Guys always wanted to do Nashville,
Yeah.
selfishly. Just that location where it's at is pretty ideal. Being able to share arena with the Predators and you're kind of right in the middle of things down there.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think it has to be the right place. But, it's not my decision to make. That's Commissioner Fruit and some of those ideas and decision that's on his plate. But certainly, you would love to see it if because you only want the game to grow.
Right. The State of the Union. Do you think that full time is on the horizon at some point, or is it too much to ask for guys who are working on their own careers?
Yeah, I think at this point in time, it's still you're looking at least 5, 10 years away, and I would put it more on the latter um, for that to happen. Like you really need big sponsorship money, and you need TV and all that other stuff to make it a full time gig for these guys. Because like guys are trying to do both leagues, and even that's tough enough.
Mm-hmm.
With some of the union stuff, because not like if you get hurt, it's not like oh you get hurt and never play again, you're fine. So I think that's something to certainly consider. And I hope that in 15 years, it's like what the MLS is now. And I think that's feasible and where there's academies and, you would have thought the MLS would have been as successful as it is now where it was 25 years ago.
Right.
So if they can just get to being almost similar to the MLS, like that's a home run in my opinion.
Absolutely. One more topic before we call it. Olympics. Your thoughts on sixes?
It's like box outdoor, and if I was the U.S. guys, I would put together a team of mostly guys that have box experience. You need to play offense and defense, and it gets up and down. And the best thing about it is why they decided to do it was now all these countries can play it because you don't need a roster of 25 guys. You can have a roster of 12.
Yep.
So if you're looking at, a small European country, it's like, hey, we only need 12 guys to be able to compete. And I think that's what makes it viable to be an Olympic sport is the roster size. And obviously being able to play in the Olympics is a big deal. So launching that, having it be in LA, I think is really cool. And it kind of allows it evens the playing field with US and Canada. We've had their number in outdoor and they've had ours in indoor, and we'll see who has whose number when it comes to the Olympics.
Absolutely. Now the Ravens have done a lot of stuff with the with sixes in their tournaments in February. Had you a chance to check out any of that? And your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually went down to the place in Virginia. It's called the St. James to actually check that out, and it was really cool. Being able to see that in that venue. So, I credit Paul and his brother for taking the massive risk of not only the sixes but just the PLL in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, what they've been able to do and put on is certainly something that's been such an undertaking. And I know that Paul has taken a lot of sacrifices and risks to make that happen. So but also too, it gives another revenue stream for the players that aren't playing in the NLL to kind of do that and showcase themselves and try to win a championship and make a little bit of money on the side. But also, they're putting themselves out there for the potential of making, that Olympic team and talking to a lot of very, very high US guys, that's now that the Olympics are in play, that's kind of their final goal. Right. Where it's like, hey, I'm doing this. When you ask how many years you have left, guys are like, well, if I can make that Olympic team, that's it. Right. That's a cherry on top, and that's it for me. There's not much else to accomplish. So now it just adds another thing for guys to try to accomplish, which I think is really cool.
Right. Now, lacrosse over the last number of years has made it off of the ground floor finally and gone around 4 or 5. Do you think with the Olympics, another 280 countries watching it, that's the skyscraper?
Yeah, I hope. You certainly think with the media coverage and being able to be at the Olympics, that's the pinnacle of a lot of things in the countries and worldwide recognition. So as far as more people getting involved and sticks in their hands, it's the Olympics for sure. And if that's the barrier of entry for a lot of people to play, why not? And then hopefully from there, then they're either getting into box lacrosse or they're getting into field and can kind of grow their sport from that. And obviously focus on the Olympics, but that's something that this game certainly needs. And I only see it as a positive, Gary.
Absolutely. Brett, I want to thank you. You had a lot going on over there, and I really, really thank you. You've retirement seems to have really worked well with you.
Yeah, I got 2 kids under 2, so I apologize. They're all over me. But yeah, it's awesome being a dad, and I got a lot on my plate. And now, rather than swing a lacrosse stick, I'm trying to work on my golf game and being more competitive there. So there's steps that I made playing box lacrosse and growing and getting better. That's what hopefully I'm trying to do. 15 years from now, I hope that my golf game looks like my lacrosse game.
That would be awesome. What a great thing to shoot for, too.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Wish you all the best with everything you're doing coaching wise and staying in the game, because we really need guys like you to stick around and give your knowledge to the guys up and coming, because that's what's going to keep them there.
No, I appreciate Gary. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm at the Haverford School here, and we have our state championship games tomorrow against our rival Malvern Prep. So we're pumped for that, and just try to keep giving back to the game that's given me a lot. And I appreciate even what you're doing on the media side and trying to get more people involved. So thanks for having me, and thanks for supporting the game.
My pleasure, as always. Thank you again. And this has been NLL Lacrosse Talk. I'm Gary Groob. Keep coming back to us every Thursday at 4. Today we had a little bit of a different time. All good. And we'll be back week after week after week, growing the game. Until next week, keep your sticks high, keep your spirits higher, and we'll see you all again soon. Until then, take care.